guys, it's Hannah and I'm back with your next house buying tip. So we have talked about figuring out whether you want to make the decision to start looking at buying a house or not. Whether your decision to buy a house is based off of more of a need or more of a want, and why you're really looking to buy a house, and if it's actually the smartest move to do that. So let's assume that you've gone through all those steps and you have determined that you definitely are ready to start the home buying process, and that your reason is a legitimate reason and that it is definitely a good financial move for you. So with that assumption, we are going to start talking about things that you can do to help prepare yourself for this process. And the very first thing I would say that you should do is start to figure out what your budget needs to be, because that's going to determine the size of house that you can purchase. That's going to determine the location that you can purchase it. It's going to determine a lot of things. The financial aspect of buying the house is the most important piece. It's not finding your dream house, like I mentioned before, because if you can't afford your dream house, there's no point in purchasing it. So let's talk about how to start figuring out what you can afford and not. So these are going to be really rough estimates and may not apply to you. So I'm going to try to give a couple examples. So maybe you can fit under one of these categories, but really you're going to have to dig into deep into your financial picture and your bills and your income to really figure out a true picture. And I might delve into this further in a next video. I'm thinking about giving the example of when I purchased my first house and going through all of those details. But for now, like I said, let's look at some broad cases. So I live in Tennessee, so I like to always use stats from Tennessee when I'm determining general cases, just because I know a lot of my audience currently lives in Tennessee. So I thought it was interesting, the average or the mean income for a household in Tennessee is actually $52,375. So that's for a household. So that can be one person or that can be a spouse, so it's an entire household is $52,375. I would say that usually roughly equates to a spouse, two spouses earning income, because I'm pretty sure the average personal income is a little bit under that. So let's assume that most households have two earning individuals, and it is that average of about $52,000. So based off of that, I wanted to go over three scenarios: one that's under that amount, one that's about that amount, and one that is over that amount. And based off of those income levels, figure out what an approximate maximum house value that those individuals should purchase. So the first example I wanted to go over is $30,000. So obviously that is under the median income level for an average household in Tennessee. So with that in mind, that should be able to be used by more individuals. So obviously if you make more than $30,000, you might be in a different category. But obviously if the mean is $52,000, there's going to be some people in this $30,000 bracket. So based off of a $30,000 gross income, you typically make about $2,100 take-home pay, $21,050, give or take, depending on how much you have taken out for taxes and health insurance and all of those kind of things. But I would say on average you make about $2,000 to $2,200 take-home pay. With that in mind, you want to start to figure out what house you can afford. And banks and other instances or other places that loan you money typically will look at your debt to income ratio and a lot of factors. We're not going to go into all of that in this video, but I will like to mention that a lot of times they want your monthly payment amount for your mortgage and your taxes and your insurance. So the whole cost of your house to be under 30% of your gross take home or your gross pay. So that $30,000. So on a monthly basis for a $30,000 income, that would be $750. $750 for all of your housing costs. That is what they like you to stay under. And really, if a bank wants you to stay under that, then it's probably a good idea for you to set that threshold for yourself. I personally don't even like to get anywhere close to the 30%. But again, when we're just thinking about general numbers right now, it's a good starting point. So $30,000 is $750 a month for all your housing costs. Based off of that, the average house price you could afford, or the maximum house price you would want to afford at that, would be a $112,000 house. That is factoring in the amount for the taxes and the insurance and your mortgage payment for a $112,000 house. Would cost you about $750 for all of those things. And that's based off of a 5% interest rate. I did 5% because that's significantly higher than what the interest rate is right now. I always like to go higher when I'm estimating. So again, this is a maximum, and this is based off of also a 10% down payment. A lot of banks like you to put closer to 20%. Other banks may only make you put 5% or maybe even none down. But on this example, this is with a 10% down payment, so $11,000 on an $116,000 house, which would be about $750 a month. That is a safe bet that you would stay under a reasonable threshold if you bought a house under that at that income level. Then for $50,000, let's look at that. So $50,000, your take-home pay is about $3,500. Again, this can vary a little bit, but broad numbers, $3,500. So based off of the same calculations, that is going to be a monthly payment of about $1,200 that you would want to stay under for your housing. $1,250 is what I based it off of. So again, based off of what that 30% of your gross pay is, the $12,500, that equates to a house value of $200,000 with taxes and insurance factored in. If you make $75,000, then that means your take-home pay is probably about $5,600. Based off of that, you probably want to stay under that 30% threshold, which is $18,075. That monthly cost equates to a house value of about $805,000. With that 10% down payment, which would be about $30,000, $500, and that 5% interest rate. So again, these are very rough estimates, and don't say that just because you make $50,000 that you can afford a $200,000 house. What I'm saying is that you probably shouldn't purchase a house above $200,000 if you make $50,000 currently, unless you're going to put more than 10% down. I would love to talk to you about your specific numbers, your specific income level, your debt, all those kind of things to figure out a more specific dollar amount that you can afford. But this is a great starting point to figure out, can I even afford a house right now? Right now, the average house price in Knoxville is about $177,000. So based off of that, anybody who makes over $50,000 in Knoxville can probably afford a house in Knoxville. Somebody in that $30,000 range probably cannot afford an average house in Knoxville. They will probably have to go with a lower than average value house to be able to afford one, because they're in that $116,000 range, not $175,000 house. So use this, calculate where you are. If you are nowhere close to these income brackets, again, shoot me a message. I'd be glad to calculate this rough estimate or go in more depth with you. So stay tuned for my next video. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be going into the nitty-gritties of my income level when I purchased my first house. I will give you a small hint that I was fresh out of college. I never had a full-time job. I really didn't have hardly any job until I graduated. So that's just a little sneak peek into where I was financially when I purchased my first house. So it's definitely doable at a low income bracket, but I will go over all the details and the exact cost it was for everything from day one of my loan. So stay tuned, ask me any questions, post them on the Facebook group, post them in the comments, send me a private message. I don't care how it is. Just if you have any questions about figuring out what you can afford, just let me know. And don't forget to subscribe and share the Facebook group with all your friends. Have a great day.